Fighting for freedom, liberty, and the restoration of the Constitution. The Patrick Riggins Show. Call in now at 865-243-8255. That's 243-TALK. And now your host, Patrick Riggins.
Welcome back to the Patrick Riggins Show. This is Patrick Riggins. Here again this week, bugging the liberals, bothering the conservatives, but making everyone think. and that's what I'm here to do. This week, once again, we have some quick clips from the Republican Weekly Address. If you are a regular listener of this show, you may be starting to ask, hey, Patrick, every week you're taking apart the Republican Address on your show. Do you ever wonder that, Patrick?
That's too long for me to...
Yeah, just go with the hey Patrick part.
Ditto. Hey Patrick.
There you go.
Ditto.
So people say I kind of get on them, and what about Obama? You know, he does one of these each week as well. You could comment on it too. Yes, I know, but it is the same thing he always says. So here is his address in a nutshell. 1, the economy is doing fine. 2, he is creating more jobs than we have ever created before in the history of this country. And 3, the Republicans are trying to stop him from helping you through spending more of your tax money on free health care. There you go. There you have Obama's addresses for the last few months. But before the Republicans think they're going to get off easy in all this, here are some interesting clips from their weekly addresses from the last 3 weeks.
Then we would finally be able to pursue a common sense, step-by-step approach
and implement common sense, step-by-step reforms.
Republicans in Congress are committed to a step-by-step approach
that containing costs step-by-step, not expanding government in one fell swoop, is the right approach to healthcare reform.
all at a lower cost.
That lower cost
that's focused on lowering the cost of care.
At the lowest cost.
That protects Americans' access to the care they need from the doctor they choose, all at a lower cost.
The goal of healthcare reform all along should have been to ensure that people get the care they need from the doctor they choose at a lower cost.
That protect Americans' access to the care they need from the doctor they choose at the lowest cost.
Sounds like they're giving the same old song and dance as well.
Are they talking about the lowest cost?
And step by step, government intrusion.
But it's the lowest cost.
But it is the lowest cost.
I did catch that.
But much, much lower than the market could deliver. As I've said on this show over and over, both sides of this debate are pushing for a government solution to our health care. Both sides want to run our health care system. Here is a third, and I would say more logical and correct point.
You have a right to your life, and you have a right to your liberty. You ought to have a right to keep what you earn in a free country. But you don't have a right to stuff. You don't have a right to services or things like a house or a job, because in order to get that, the government would have to take it from somebody else. If somebody claims you have a right to a car, and they don't have one, and the government gets them a car, they have to take the money or the car from somebody else. So it's a contradiction in terms. If somebody has a right to something, they have to violate somebody else's right. So the most you can expect in a free society is for government to make an attempt at protecting rights, not to try to redistribute wealth. If you do that, all people lose their rights.
I know that clip is a little noisy, but in case you could not recognize the voice, that was Dr. Ron Paul. And what he was stating was you cannot have a right to, quote, stuff, because government does not give you rights, something we have talked about extensively on this show. You are born with rights. The very fact you're a human being gives you rights. And along with those rights are my rights. You have your rights, and I have those identical rights as well. So when you claim a right to something like housing or health care or even food, the government does not produce anything. So it must take from one person to give to another in order for you to have it, which makes it not a right, because you are violating my rights in order to have yours. Your right to free speech does not infringe on me having mine. You can talk, I can talk. in order for you to talk, I don't have to be silenced and my right to talk taken away. But when you claim the right to health care, you have to look at how it will be provided. The government doesn't make health care. Doctors do. So the government has to take my money and give it to the doctor in order for you to have your health care right, which violates my rights and thus invalidates your claim to health care as a right. The funny thing in all of this, liberals will claim health care is a right, and it has to be provided to everyone. But when we have a right enumerated in the Constitution, like to keep and bear arms, the fact I maybe cannot afford a gun never enters the debate. You would think that long before we determined health care to be a right and thus should be provided, we would first provide for the ones that are actually listed. And I have yet to see any liberal anywhere state that government should be providing me with a gun. In this next clip, Dr. Paul talks about how the Republicans have a chance to try and turn these things around.
When Republicans are in opposition, they do a pretty good job of sticking together, challenging the incumbents. But unless they change their way, they will not restore confidence with the American people, because the people got frustrated 4 years ago and 2 years ago and said Republicans weren't doing a very good job because they were making government much bigger. So the big test now is can the Republicans get their credibility back? And right now they have a chance, but there's reason to be a little bit skeptical. I'm hoping to make sure the Republicans stick to what they're doing now and try to take a principled stand against the encroachment of big government.
Again, I apologize for the bad audio, but what Dr. Paul is saying is that he hopes the Republicans act to reduce government if they win control of the Congress, of the complete Congress again, and the presidency. Personally, I don't hold out a lot of hope for this to happen, but we'll see. I hope he is right, because the Democrats are obviously not going to reduce government. And a lot of Republicans secretly feel that same way. Although just winning the Congress would help if they decide to take a principled stand against all of this government intrusion into our daily lives. But it is going to be hard for them to make the right decisions unless you aren't ringing their phones off the hook, emailing the heck out of them, and writing lots of letters. Washington is a very seductive place, and the pressure to play along is really high. These representatives face pressure from the press, from the establishment, from the bureaucracy. It takes a lot of support from back in their district to keep them on the straight and narrow. And by pressure, I mean letting them know you're watching what they're doing, and if they start breaking their promises, then let them know you're going to recall them. And if that's not doable, then you're going to work them to get unseated at the next election. By keeping them on their toes, you're keeping them honest. The way to do this is just stay informed and updated on their positions, the bills they helping sponsor or not sponsor, and the votes they cast. Also, what committees they serve on and what they're saying on the committees. All these things are very important. And I realize most people are working and don't have a whole lot of time to keep up with all this, but you need to stay as informed as best you can. Real quick here, we're going to take a call from Jim up in Pigeon Forge and see what he's got to say. Go ahead, Jim.
Hey, you got me worked up when you were talking about healthcare, because the American healthcare system is as far from a free enterprise system as anything I ever saw.
Oh, no, it's a command economy. just like in the good old Soviet Union.
Yeah, well, that's before Obamacare.
Sure, yeah, he's not the sole person. I mean, this has been around for a long time, and it's been a long time coming.
And for the average working man, insurance premiums are really no different than taxes.
Sure, yeah.
And we've been convinced we have to carry it, and we do if we want to save any money.
Yeah, well, insurance is, and I'm sure you remember, insurance used to be insurance. So if you're driving around in your car and you get a little scratch on it, you'll maybe buff it out or fix it. The insurance is in case something bad happens. Now what they're wanting to go to, and what we've essentially had for a long time, is just single payer. You go in and people say, well, I don't want to pay anything or very little on my medical care. So it's not so much insurance anymore. It's just someone else paying.
Yeah, well, maybe that's because nearly every human being in a civilized nation in the world has free health care except Americans.
Yeah, that's it. But where do they come? Where do their leaders come when they need good health care? They come here.
Yeah, we're 41st in the life expectancy, and we're way down in deaths of newborn babies and everything else. I don't see where our system is that much better. It's just quicker.
Well, if
got so much unused
sure
machinery.
So if you were living in a free country and another country wasn't free, should we be like that country just because we can make an argument on certain things are better than others?
I suspect that in the end, health care is going to be something that we just really have to figure out a way to provide for everybody.
Well, that's again, Jim, you go down that, once you start down that path, you're getting into what else gets provided. So, yeah. But real quick, I'm at the bottom of the hour here, so I'm going to have to go commercial. I appreciate your call. Do you have anything before you go real quick?
Quick thought.
Okay.
A guy spends $2 million to get an office that pays him $200,000 a year. Do you think he's really paying attention to the voters?
Yeah, exactly. They pay a heck of a lot more than that to get in office. And the funny thing is, thanks, Jim, for that call. The funny thing is, right before we go to the break, these guys go in, we know their salary, and they come out multimillionaires. And we sit down and say, well, you didn't get paid $3 million, but you seem to leave office with it. So something to think about anyway. This is Patrick Riggins with the Patrick Riggins Show. Bottom of the hour break. We'll be back.